So it was really such fun because I had to, do I leave her in her mid-30s or does she get 20 more years and have the joy of menopause, right?
Right.
Do I stick to the facts of the novel, which I wrote? Do I stick to the facts of the movie, which I also wrote? And so having made all those decisions, I wrote the short story, had a great time with it, and at the end, the cop from Compromising Positions happens to call. They see each other for a second, and then the next day he calls her. And she starts to relate what happens and then says, but that's another story. And then I realized I wasn't ready to leave her.
Ah.
That, number one, I loved being her voice again or hearing her voice again. And also it was time to go back to the suburbs and to see what this whole new generation of 30-somethings now in those Center Hall colonials were doing. And, you know, what the women are doing, because, you know, we who came at, you know, the big time in the women's movement, most of us who developed careers kind of ran out of the house sort of remembering to say goodbye to the children, you know, on our way out. And now you have, of course, many women are working, many women with kids are working, but more and more are not only taking time off for, you know, a few months, a year or so, but they're leaving their careers. And
men too, actually.
Yeah. And you're saying, well, okay, but what about when you're 45? You may have another 45 years of life. I mean, what then? And are you going to reinvent yourself? Because very often you just can't go back if you've been away for so long. Also, what is this going to mean in terms of women's places? I mean, now we have the Civil Rights Act, so nobody can legally discriminate against women. But are the law schools, the medical schools, the corporations going to start saying, why should we give this slot to a woman when they don't stay the course?
Or you've got the age thing rearing up too.
Right. That's absolutely.
I mean, I reinvented myself when I was 50. Also married my current husband on my 50th birthday.
Oh, that's nice.
It was. I thought I should have something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
But the age thing actually becomes much more of an imperative than the sex thing when you get up to about that age, because there's a reluctance, you know, to accept people who are going to have theoretically a much shorter working span, although that's all changing.
Yeah. So, you know, I had all these questions, but basically I just wanted to write a good whodunit. And I found that this was really the best writing time of my life.
Was it?
Yeah.
What fun.
It was fun. I mean, you know, it's not that I say, all right, I have to grind out another one. But I didn't think, oh, this would be a good day to, you know, plant zinnias, or I'd love to buy shoes today, or I didn't have some other pull. I'm lonely, I want to have lunch with a friend. I mean, I can't say I raced up to my office, you know, with wings on my sneakers saying, whoopee, whoopee. But it was a lovely thing going back to her world and back to her voice. And I had a good time.
Well, do you think that maybe, you know, having let her age, having let that time so that you could take the roots of the story but let it blossom all over again?
That's right, and kind of meet her all, you know.
All over again?
All over again. And see what she had to say about being a woman in her 50s, about, she's a widow in the book. I killed off her husband, but it happens before the book starts, and it was very as quick as I could possibly do it. You know, I mean, I didn't want him to suffer, but I didn't want
Right.
him around.
He died off stage. Well, and in
Yeah.
doing that, then you changed that whole situation that, you know, she was in the front book. You know, I was just thinking as I was sitting here listening to you, I wonder, you know, I'm just realizing that like my 40th college reunion is coming up, and I
Oh,
was
wow.
giving some thought next year to going to it, and I thought, wonder if this is the same imperative. That, you know, behind that, as we're getting older, maybe we suddenly want to revisit our past. Maybe you really wanted to revisit
Yeah, that's a good.
Judith, kind of, you know,
Yeah.
in the same spirit
Right.
that people go off, in fact, and do look at their, from a different perspective. If you're fond of her, you kind of want to see how she turned out.
Yeah, and it was really like being with a great friend from high school.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
who really knows you, doesn't buy a sophisticated act, knows your essence, and that it was a lovely, lovely time.
It was just enormous fun to read it. I'm not myself terribly fond of readings, but you have such an incredible first sentence in this book, and I can't do your voice. I think it requires your voice. I wondered if I could persuade you, yes, have a drink, to read.
Actually, you know what I'm also going to need? I have to find my glasses.
You have to find your glasses. Okay, well, then I will talk for a moment more while you're looking for your glasses about Long Time No See, because we're not only going back, are they?
I think they're in my.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no. Okay, well, we're going to have to, maybe that wasn't such a good idea then. I didn't even think about the fact that we'd have to go off stage to get them.
Yeah.
Well, what I could say is somebody's going to bring your glasses to you.
Thank
which
you.
is wonderful.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Sorry,
very
I was
much.
unprepared. No, it's-
What I could say is that it isn't only, well, it was I who was unprepared. I wasn't thinking about it. It isn't only Judith that we meet in the book, but it is, in fact, the detective,
Right.
who was a character. She was the lead character. And while she is in this book, too, I think in the end they're more, you know, they're at least as much of a team.
Right.
And
They
part
are
of
a
it is
team.
that the husband's out of the equation, and
Right,
you know they're both
right.
kind of on the brink of. So one of the suspense elements in the book, in fact, is what are we going to do about all
Yeah.
that, which I truly thought was great.
And I brought back a couple of her women friends.
Right.
Mainly Nancy, the kind of southern belle, wild woman, and which was great. It was great fun. Except I did the audio tape, and I thought, I mean, New York accent, no problem, but she's from Georgia. So fortunately, a friend of mine is A, an actress, B, from Mississippi, and C, had taught theater.
Perfect.
So we went to lunch. We had a 3-hour lunch. She gave me Southern lessons. And then she said, well, yeah, I don't sound like a... She said, I sound as if I'd spent a lot of time in a New Orleans bordello. But
Hey,
I was
works.
able... But this is strictly Judith.
Okay.
On an unseasonably warm Halloween night, while I was reading a snappy treatise on Wendell Willkie's support of FDR's war policies and handing out the occasional bag of M&Ms to a trick-or-treater, the fair-haired and dimpled Courtney Logan, age 34, magna cum laude graduate of Princeton, erstwhile investment banker at Patton Giddings, wife of darkly handsome Greg, mother of 5-year-old Morgan and an 18-month-old Travis, canner of peach salsa, collector of vintage Petty Point, and ex-president of a Citizens for a More Beautiful Shorehaven, vanished from Long Island into thin air.
That's just an incredible sentence. It's a whole paragraph.
Yeah.
But you know, it's amazing what you and I've thought about that. You know, it takes so much polish and self-confidence, I think, to be able to write a sentence that long and that complex without, I mean, you know, drawing breath really for the reader. Could you have done that, do you think, when you started?
I don't know. First of all, I rarely reread my work. I mean, I obviously reread Compromising so I could remember the facts. But I don't analyze my own work. I don't think, I'm not that analytical generally about fiction anyway, unless I'm reviewing. I tend to want to just go along. I want to be taken into an alternate universe and go for the ride. And that's true as a writer as well as when I'm a reader. And so could I have written it? Beats me. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at a couple of my early novels.